We are now into the finishing classroom section here. So we're going to talk about a couple of keys and a couple of very important principles to follow when you're working on your finishing. Some of these principles will apply to other skills, but we've got 8 here that we're going to look at. You can see them all on the right side of your screen. So in this video, it's just me in front of the camera. I have those other film studies where we're looking at NBA clips, and then I also have all the skills and drills where I'm actually on the floor and the players are on the floor with me. So this one is just me talking through a couple of different things to think of when you are training your finishing. The first thing that I want you to think about is your feet and your footwork. So there are a couple different ways you can go off your feet when you're finishing. One is just a regular 1-foot jump. So you can either jump off your left foot or your right foot, and you want to be able to jump off either foot and use either combination of hands. So that could mean you jump off your left foot, shoot with your left hand. Jump off your right foot, shoot with your left hand. Jump off your right foot, shoot with your right hand or your left hand. So you want to be able to mix up your hands and your feet. You can also jump off 2 feet off a regular jump stop. So that's where you dribble in, you land on both feet at the same time, and then you make a finishing move. You can also work on step throughs. So that's where you gather the basketball. It might be you shot fake, step through, and then finish. It could be you dribble through the paint, jump stop, and then reverse pivot, step through to the rim. But basically stepping through is just whenever you gather the basketball and then you take one more step, could be left, right, forward, or backwards, to then finish at the rim. And then we also have shot stop, and in the elite experience, I describe what shot stops are, but that's basically where you drive and you plant on your outside foot and land on your inside foot, get on 2 feet, and then there's a lot of options out of that. All of the options for that are in the elite experience. Next thing is just your hands. So obviously you want to work on finishing with your left hand and your right hand. You also want to work on finishing with your hand from different angles. So the first one here that I have is just a scoop. So that's like a finger roll, or your hand is directly under the ball and your hand's under the ball and you're laying it in. You can also go with an overhand. So instead of going up for a layup where your hand is under the ball, that would mean your hand is behind the ball and it's closer to kind of a jump shot. But just think regular layup with your hand behind the ball. You can also go with like a side or a hook shot hand placement. So that's where the ball is coming to the side of your body and you're looking to finish over your shoulder either way. And then the last one where we're talking about the angle of your hands could just be across the face. So imagine I'm looking at the goal right here. You know, that could be where I've got the ball on my left shoulder and I have to bring the basketball across my face to get it up into the rim. So the main point there is just you want to be working on finishing from all these different angles with your left hand and your right hand, but that could be a high hand placement. You can go under the ball, to the side of the ball, on the other side of the ball. Just be working on all those sorts of different angles so you can be comfortable with all those different types of finishes. Now, the third thing is different angles, and the visual here shows precisely what I'm talking about. So you want to be able to finish off of a baseline drive. You want to be able to finish on a straight line drive. So that could be where you start at the top of the key and just attack the rim going in a straight line. You could do a finger roll where it swishes right over the front of the rim, or you could use the backboard. You also want to be able to attack at a 45-degree angle. You also could throw in reverse layups here, and then you could just pick any angle on the court that you should be able to finish from. And as we talk about these angles, and now we're getting into all the variables of finishing, you should be able to finish off of either foot, with either hand, from any angle, with any type of arc. So whenever you're working on your finishing, work on that. Mix up your feet, mix up your hands, mix up the angle where you're finishing, and mix up the arc. And you can just change one of those things at a time. Do a layup, make a finish, and then change one variable. Do a different type of layup and just change one of those variables at a time. But that is the angles. Now for the arc, and I'll say this is the main point of the arc, is shooting over rim protectors and playing against physicality in the paint is one of the big separators from high school to college and then college to pro. We recently, at the high school that I just coached at, we recently had a player, I was talking to his dad actually. One of his sons played at Stanford and one of them is currently playing in Texas, both Division I schools. And he was talking about with his kids, the biggest adjustment was finishing over that length in the paint as they went from high school to college. So when it comes to arc, you want to, like, the highest arc when you're finishing, whether it's a floater or off the glass, you usually want to try to have the ball go above the backboard, not just the block, not just the white square on the backboard, but above the entire backboard. If you're working on your finishes and the ball is getting that high, that's really good. And now as you move from youth ball to high school to varsity teams to college, you're able to finish over those defenders at the rim, because the older you get, the next levels that you go to, they're just going to get taller and longer and contest shots better. So be working on your arc. The fifth thing here is to add contact or a defender. This could be a pad, it could be your teammate, or an actual defender where you're just working on finishes and you got a teammate or somebody who's working out with you who's hitting you. You could use a foam roller, a pool floater, use anything. It doesn't really matter if it looks goofy. I think that if you're adding contact and you're just stimulating the brain so that the brain has to think, here's the ball, I'm getting contact here, I got to square up my body, I got to take the contact. Playing through all those different options and variables, I think is pretty good to simulating what's in a game. Do I know what's best? Is it a pad, a foam roller, a pool, one of those pool floaty things? I don't know what's best. I'm not that smart. But I do think just adding some sort of contact is a good idea. Now, you can, if you wanted in your workout, let's say you did 15 minutes of finishing or even 10 minutes of finishing, you could take the first half of that 10 minutes, the first half of that 15 minutes, do finishes with no contact, and then you could take the second half of that 10 minutes or second half of that 15 minutes, and then you could add contact in some way or another. So just getting your body used to taking that physicality, having to stay strong, having to stay balanced through all that is a good idea. The next point is reads. The most common question, or one of the most common questions I get from players is when they're driving or they're in the paint, how do they know when to finish and how do they know when to pass? Well, most basically, if the defender is in front of you, that means to decelerate, pull up, or kick out. If there is no defender in front of you, that typically means get to the rim as fast as possible. Now, we're still just talking about training right now. The next video, the finishing IQ and then the skills and drills on the court, is going to talk about angles and finishing and cutting off defenders and more of like how to play as opposed to how to train. But if there's nobody in front of you at the rim, you got to be able to use your body to cut defenders off and create advantages and create angles to finish. But anytime you can add a read, so that could just be a defender slides totally in front of you on your drive and they cut you off. Now you got to finish over them, or you could do a Euro step, or you could do a side hop, pro hop, shot fake step through. You could dribble into a post up. You can do all these different things. But if you can add defenders into your training to force you to make a read, that is a positive as well. And then, of course, if the defender doesn't slide in front of you, that's when you get to the rim as fast as possible. The other thing that you want to focus on is body control. And then under body control, I've got 3 points here. Number one, 2 feet. Playing off 2 feet is greater than fancy. Here's what I mean by that. If you watch a high school game, college game, or a lot of pro games, a lot of the finishes are really effective, and most finishes are best off of 2 feet in a powerful position, just because that's the best way basketball is played. I've had my experience working with trainers, and I've trained kids. I don't really consider myself a trainer first and foremost. I consider myself a coach before a trainer. Is there a difference? I don't really know. But there is kind of a difference between trainers and what you see on Instagram, where they're working on all these crazy angles and crazy spins and just these crazy moves. Do I think that that is wrong? No, not at all. I think that's great. There's some Instagram accounts I follow, and I'm always looking for new drills, new innovative drills, fun drills that I can use with my players. So I'm a big supporter of the stuff that looks different or looks flashy or looks fancy. I'm oftentimes a fan of that, so I'm not hating on anybody. But that's when you're training, to work on all that stuff. But in a game, you also have to consider and you also have to prioritize that getting on 2 feet is going to get your mind and your body under control. It's going to slow the game down. It's going to allow you to make better reads, and it's going to allow you to escape poor situations. If you go off of your foot in the game and you're up in the air and you realize you can't get the shot off and now you got to pass it out, well, you're going to probably travel or turn it over. But if you're playing off of 2 feet, you can realize because you're under control on 2 feet, you need to pass it before you finish. So all that said, the main point here is that it's not that you can't work on innovative, different, new, fresh drills. Definitely do those, but just make sure when you are training, you need to prioritize in your head that when you're in a game, most likely, and talk to your coach on this, they may agree or disagree, but most likely you're going to need to play off 2 feet more than doing crazy fancy layups. Number two under body control is just decelerate. A problem a lot of players have when they get in the paint is they're sprinting, and then once they get inside the foul line, they're not able to decelerate, slow down their dribble, drop their body, and get under control. That's when a lot of players commit charges. They jump off of a foot, they go to finish, and then they realize nothing's there, and then they pass it out and they turn it over. Or some players just leave their feet. So make sure when you're in the paint, of course, you want to have fast finishes where you sprint to the rim and get the layup off really quick, but you also want to be able to decelerate in the paint, which leads to the third point, which is what I just kind of talked about there, is don't commit charges. And that kind of ties in with the reads that I just mentioned before, that if you got somebody in front of you, you've got to be able to make the right decision, shoot over them, drive by them, Euro step, or probably a kick out, or it could be a lob. You just want to be able to make sure you're not committing charges, because then you're also getting a personal foul and a turnover, which is not good. Now, the best drills, here's the best drill. I don't know. I'm not that smart. I think there's no really best drill for anything, and that's a recurring theme that I have in my coaching. It's not about the drill, because if you go to an NBA or WNBA practice, or you go to a Division I men's team or a Division I women's team, I would almost guarantee, because I've been to a lot of these practices, I know several NBA, college, and a lot of really, really good high school coaches, they're pretty much all working on the same stuff, and that's everything we've already talked about. Now, on a personal level, if there's a drill that you really, really like, and you incorporate, a tennis ball dribble into some sort of finish, or you're working on 2-ball finishing, or you have a certain series where you do 10 types of this layup, and then 10 types of that layup, and then 10 times of that finish. If there's something that really, really works for you, that you think that you know is helping you, and you can feel yourself finishing better around the rim, then yeah, absolutely do that. But the key is, in your drills, know why you are doing what you're doing, know the decisions and the reads that you'll have to make in a game, and know what defenders are going to do in games and how you're going to beat the defenders. If you include that in your drills, then I don't really think it's super important on exactly what finish you're working on, as long as you know how it's going to apply in a game. So those are the that's focused on how to train. The classroom series here is focusing on how to train. We're going to have a finishing IQ study as well, and then film studies also from real game footage that you can see somewhere on your screen here. And we will keep it rolling, and let's keep getting better.